Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we talk about high-value hi-fi home theater and headphone equipment. And today we're talking about 3 reasons why you may need a Phono Preamp and 3 Phono Preamps to choose from. So, sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about some Phono Preamps. So why would you even need a Phono Preamp? Well, because phono cartridges, very low. So we need to boost the signal or the gain and then boost it again in a preamp. So some turntables don't have a Phono Preamp. Some do, like the Fluence RT80 and the RT81. They have internal amps built in, so you won't need an external Phono Preamp. The Uturn offerings, you can add a Phono Preamp to, well, any of their models. And the Pro-Ject SB Phono SB something like that. I just did a video. I'll link it up there. They do 3 names, and they do 3 names on the Phono Preamp too. Anyway, that turntable also had a installed Phono Preamp. So in that case, one wouldn't need a Phono Preamp. So number 1, if your turntable doesn't have an included Phono Preamp, you're going to need one. Number 2, if your amplifier, receiver, or integrated amplifier doesn't have an integrated Phono Preamp, then you're going to need one. Like the Schit Freya S. That one doesn't have an integrated Phono Preamp. Like any of the SMSL or topping amps, DA9 from SMSL, one of my favorites. IEMA DO3 doesn't have a phono input. So one would need an external Phono Preamp or a turntable with an included Phono Preamp to make music sound good. The third reason why you may want to get a external Phono Preamp is for sound quality. Normally, an external Phono Preamp is going to sound better than one that's, well, installed on your turntable or installed in your integrated amplifier. For instance, if you have a $400 or $500 integrated amplifier or $400 or $500 receiver, there's a lot going on inside the receiver if it's a home theater receiver, or inside an integrated amplifier. Let's say it has a DAC. Let's say it has a bunch of inputs, a remote control. One has to consider how much money is being spent on the internal Phono Preamp. Now, cost doesn't always equal performance, but I think at this level, most people would consider a $100 Phono Preamp, an external one, to be better than the internal Phono Preamp that's included in a lot of integrated amplifiers at $500 or less, or receivers at $1,000 or less. Now, if you have a really good integrated amplifier, maybe its integrated Phono Preamp is going to be better than some of the ones we discussed today, but it probably isn't. If your turntable doesn't have one, if your integrated amplifier doesn't have one, or you just want to improve on the sound quality, you may want to consider an external Phono Preamp. All right, so we have 3 Phono Preamps. They're all at different price ranges too. So over here on the left, I'm going to show you pictures. We got the Pluto 2 from Uturn. Right in the middle, we have the Fosi Audio box. Seriously, this is the model number. The Fosi Audio box X2 Phono Preamp. Next to that, we have the Pro-Ject Phono Box S2 Ultra. Pro-Ject model names are 3. So we have Phono Box, that's 1. S2, that's 2, Ultra. The turntable was the SB Phono something. So they always do 3 names. I don't know why. It's pretty cool though. They got their own style. So we'll talk about the most affordable, and then we'll just go up the chain. So the Fosi Audio Box X2 Phono Preamp, $70. It has 2 NJ2 tubes, and it has variable gain. So on some Phono Preamps, they'll have an adjustable gain. They'll also have an adjustable input impedance, and sometimes an adjustable input capacitance. Some other preamps, like the Fosi Audio, the Pluto 2 from Uturn, don't have a whole bunch of adjustability. The Fosi Audio has 3 different gain settings, 39 dB, 42 dB, and 45 dB. It also, strangely enough, has a 3.5 millimeter auxiliary input on the front. I wish it didn't have a 3.5 millimeter input on the front. I don't know why it's there. I feel like it shouldn't be there, but it's there. So if you want to use it, use it. I didn't use it. I just hooked up a turntable. Speaking of which, I hooked up the Fluence RT83 with the Ortofon 2M Blue cartridge, which I added later. Actually, I just changed the stylus on the Ortofon 2M Red, which you can do. So you can add the blue stylus to the red stylus. Anyway, I also tried out the Nagaoka MP110, and then I ran it into the Emotiva XPA Gen 3, Gen 2, 2-channel amplifier. It's this one. And then through the Freya, and then into some speakers. The Polk R100s. So sound-wise, the Fosi, strangely enough, is kind of the most exciting of the bunch. Very dynamic, very punchy. There's emphasis on the bass, emphasis on the highs. The mids are not too shallow or too stepped back. It's just fun. And it also adds an added sense of depth and largeness because of the tubes. I was really surprised. It's really, really good for $70. Bass tightness and overall resolution kind of fell short of the Pluto 2 and the Phono Box S2 Ultra from Pro-Ject. Fell short of those from a detail retrieval standpoint. However, if you don't have a super resolute system, which means very detail-oriented cartridge, amplifier, and speakers, I think the Fosi audio is going to be just fine. I tried it with both cartridges and it sounded good with both. Now, with the Nagaoka, maybe a little bit too rich. But it sounded great with the 2M Blue and the 2M Red, which I listened to right before I changed out the stylus. So warmer and less detailed cartridges probably aren't going to be the best pairing with the Fosi audio, but something like the Ortofon OM5E, the Ortofon OM10, the Ortofon 2M Red, the Ortofon 2M Blue, all going to pair well with it. Nagaoka was fine. A little bit, that cartridge is a little bit less detailed on top, so the Fosi wasn't the perfect pairing with that one. The Pluto 2 from Uturn. It's a great name, Pluto 2. Pretty straightforward to operate. You plug it into the wall, and then you plug the RCAs and the ground in, and then you plug another set of RCAs into your amplifier, and you're done. Because there's no switches. No power switch, no gain switch, no input impedance switch, no input capacitance switch. It just is. It's fixed at 40 dB. Sound characteristics of the Pluto 2 are very detail oriented. I'm not saying it's thin, but the emphasis is definitely on the treble. And with the Ortofon 2M Blue, I actually heard a little bit of sibilance in there. It was definitely more detailed than the Fosi, maybe a little bit less emphasis on the bass, really concentrated on mid-range. Bass was tight, bass was there. It wasn't thin sounding, but it really put a microscope on the top end. So if you have warm speakers or a cartridge like the Nagaoka MP110, very good pairing with the Pluto 2. If you want some more detail in your life and that's your thing, then the Pluto 2 is probably the Phono Preamp for you. The Uturn Pluto 2 is also designed and assembled right here in Massachusetts. I'm not in Massachusetts, I'm in Texas. But it's assembled here and designed in the United States. Okay. I'm assuming the Fosi audio is made in China. The Pro-Ject Phono Box S2 Ultra. Now this one is the one that has all of the options available. So you can adjust input impedance, input capacitance, you can adjust gain. Also has a subsonic filter that can be turned on or off. This Phono Preamp is probably for more advanced users because it can do both moving coil and moving magnet cartridges. The Pluto 2 and the Fosi just do moving magnet. So there's a lot of adjustability on the Pro-Ject. It's also manufactured out of one of Pro-Ject's factories in Europe. Sound-wise, the Pro-Ject is the most even-keeled, neutral, detailed, clear Phono Preamp out of the bunch. It's very good, and it should be because it's $350. It played well with all the cartridges. So the Nagaoka 2M Blue, the 2M Red, it's going to play well with just about anything. And it's not, I don't feel like it's really emphasized in any area. I think it's just flat neutral. It's just going to pass through the center of your cartridge. I don't think this is really coloring the sound at all. So there's really not a best Phono Preamp here. I think they're all a little bit different. I think the Pro-Ject is checking all the boxes and it has the most options and it's going to work with more cartridges. But to be fair, I don't know how many people, if they're going to be spending $100 on a Phono Preamp, have a moving coil cartridge. Most people are probably going to have moving magnet cartridges. So the Pluto 2 or the Fosi going to be just fine. They do sound a little bit different. I've also heard the Schit Manny, and it sounds very similar to the Pluto. I think the Pluto 2, bit more going on in the treble, but they sound awful similar. The iFi Zen Phono sounds very similar to the Pro-Ject Phono Box S2 Ultra. They have a lot of similar characteristics. They both can handle moving coil cartridges. I actually think the Manny can handle moving coil cartridges as well. If you're looking for a cheap and easy way to improve upon the sound of your vinyl experiences, probably an external phono preamp is going to be the way to go if you are operating off of the internal phono preamp on your turntable or the internal phono preamp on your integrated amplifier or receiver, depending upon the price, of course. I'm sure there's great integrated amplifiers that have great phono preamps. A lot of the vintage stuff has great phono preamps. Actually, my realistic back here has a great phono preamp. And I'm glad I said that, because out of the three up here, the one that reminds me most of the internal phono preamp on my realistic and some of the other vintage gear, probably the Fosi Audio. Fosi Audio is also cool because you can roll those tubes if you want to. The tubes that are on the Fosi are pretty common, so you're going to be able to find a lot of different options out there if you want to roll the tubes. Fosi's a lot of fun, and frankly, it was the one that surprised me the most. It is not the most detailed. It's not as detailed as the Pluto 2. It's not as detailed as the Pro-Ject, but it was really good, and I was really surprised. If you want to just have some fun and play with some tubes, for 70 bucks, you probably can't go wrong with the Fosi. If you're getting the Pluto 2, kind of understand what characteristics your cartridge has and your overall system has in general, because it can really complement a system and it can really add more detail if that's what you're after. The Pro-Ject is the most even-keeled, very clean, uncolored out of the bunch. Very, very good. So which one's right for you depends on your situation. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/ChiefAudioMan. Every Sunday night we have Patreon-only Zooms. We also have a Patreon-only Facebook group. You can also sign up for Tidal or Amazon Music. There's links in the description. If you sign up for either one of those, I do get a commission. You can also use any of the affiliate links in the description. I am not affiliated with Uturn though, so I will not get a commission if you purchase through that link. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen through a new external phono preamp and some vinyl records, and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.